A very long time ago, back in 2000, a Scottish organist moved to Germany. And he moved to a city on the Rhine, and he knew nobody. He didn't speak a word of German, and when he arrived, he thought, I need an organ to practice on. And about 50 meters away from where this church is, I had my first apartment. We're talking about me here, by the way, in case you hadn't worked it out yet. And I contacted the church and the organist. I couldn't speak a word of German, but somehow we managed to communicate with each other. And the organist said, all right, come round to the church, I'll show you the organ, we can meet, we can talk about things, perhaps you can help me out. And from that first meeting on, I became one of the organist team here in the church, helped out with services and concerts. And this has been a kind of like a coming home for me, coming back to this church today. And we're going to head up to the organ loft, and I'm going to show you just why it's so special. Come on. On the way past, be careful of this cable. There's a story about this cable, but I'll tell you about that once we get upstairs. Before we really head up, check this out. Everywhere you can see in the stairway up to the organ loft. I can't speak English today, I'm sorry about that. This is my German home, so I'm only thinking in German. Hundreds of posters from old concerts. This is one of Germany's most famous concert organs. Let's go up and see what we can find on the way. You might recognize some famous names. And here I found one poster. It's from the very first series of concerts they had when the organ was installed in this church back at the beginning of the 80s. And this might sort of, for the organ nerds amongst you, this maybe sort of prove to you how important this organ is. And here we are. There it is, the city of Bonn. Now probably most of you know where I am. Back in June 1981, this organ was finished. And these were the opening concerts at the organ. And here, 3rd of May was the very first one. Daniel Roth, who was then organist in Sacré-Cœur in Paris. He's now, of course, in Saint-Sulpice. Daniel opened it all up. A week later, the legendary Pierre Cochereau from Notre Dame came and played. And there are wonderful stories about his visit to Bonn. He came a couple of times and played the organ here before he passed away a few years later. And there are some rather legendary stories about the amount of red wine and steak he consumed while he was here, and also the amount he smoked while he was up at the organ here. He was a bit of a chain smoker, and that didn't stop him, even at the organ. If you look further down, you can't really see it, but here at the end of May, we have Jean Langlais, one of the very famous blind French organists and French organ composers from the time. He was at St Clotilde in Paris, and St Clotilde is the church where César Franck was also organist before him. So we've got this amazing sort of lineage of French organ music here at this organ. And actually, if you just look around at some of these posters, the names you can see here, for example, under my leg, Olivier Latry. And this was, when was this? This was back in 85. Now, Olivier was a very young guy back in 85, and he was already playing here. He was already one of the, he wasn't even in Notre Dame yet, titular organist in the cathedral in Meaux. That was his first job before he took over from Pierre Cochereau in Notre Dame. And Olivier has been playing here ever since. And Olivier's become a very good friend, and we've actually appeared in concert together here a couple of times, which is always good fun. So here we are in the organ loft, and as you can see, the posters for the concerts continue, and just have a look at some of the names. It's all these names you see in international organ concerts, even today. And there are too many to mention, but let's say it basically, if you were a concert organist and you were appearing in Germany, you probably played here. So, and here it is. The old console, and I say the old console, of the Oberlinger organ here in St Josef in Bonn. Look what I found on the floor though. That is an organ pipe. It's a very flat organ pipe. I think it's been trampled by accident, and I don't think it's from this organ, at least I hope it's not from the organ. I'll leave it there for Michael, maybe he wants to do something with it. So, what's the story with the old console? Well, last year the church was attacked by lightning, and it blew out the entire electrics in the church. There's the church tower here. There is a lightning conductor on it, but it was just there was too much, and it really blew everything out. And the clock, there's a clock tower up there. The clock was out. The bells were out. There's a Glockenspiel as well. That was out, and of course the organ completely fried. The computer, the electronics inside the organ was completely fried. And when the insurance paid out, there was just about enough money to cover the repairs to get the organ playing at all. There were quite a few donations required to really finish the job, but unfortunately there wasn't enough cash there for them to rebuild the old console. That will happen at some point, but there isn't enough money for it at the moment. So yeah, they're saving up to get that done. I think they will get it done in the next few years. I hope they do, because it is, historically speaking, not unimportant, this organ, and it would be good if it worked as it should work. The more time I spend up here in the organ loft after all these years, the more I remember the stupid things we used to do. And you know, it's a big organ loft. There's space up here for a choir and an orchestra. They used to have everything up here for big masses or big services and concerts. And I just discovered this old French flag hanging in the corner, Vive la France. We used to play around with things like this when concerts were here, when we had visiting French organists, and yeah, madness really. Anyway, before we head downstairs, let's have a quick look at the pipes themselves. We're very close to the pipes, as you can see. There's the console, and direct behind them, the big 16-foot open diapason, or montre, from the Grand Orgue. And here on the other side, let me put this flag away, here on the other side we have the positif of the organ, the choir division, if you like, in English, and a nice close-up of the pipes in the choir division. You can see right through into the church there. And it's quite interesting to see the way the pipes are sort of set in this little box here. And someone sent a comment last week and asked me, we were talking about my recording technique, and said, why don't you just put a microphone in front of the organ and another microphone further back in the church? That's going to pick up the acoustic. Well, yes, that's possible. You're going to have phase problems at some point. You've got to be careful about that. But an organ is actually a stereo instrument. Did you know that? Look at the way the pipes are built up. You've got the big pipes on the outside and the little pipes on the inside, and going down in a certain fashion, and the same on the other side. Why? Well, on one side, you've got pipes that are sort of built in whole tone rows, as it were. So you've got C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp on one side, and then on the other side, you've got the C sharp, D sharp, F, G, A, B pipes on the other side. In the organ builder world, we don't use flats. They only use sharps for some reason. So you actually have a stereo organ, yeah? If you're sitting down in the church and you listen closely, you can hear some sounds coming from the left side, some sounds coming from the right side. Or is that the other way around in that picture? I'm not sure. I'm sure that's left and that's right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So if you're going to record an organ sound and want to get that effect, you need stereo microphones. Or you need to set the microphones up in a stereo way to pick up the left side, to pick up the right side. Simple as that. We've just discovered a major problem. We've been recording at the new console for about an hour, demonstrating stops, demonstrating effects and things like that. And my missus worked out there's something wrong with the sound. And it turned out that this microphone, although it was all connected, it wasn't recording. So we've wasted an hour of recording time, so much for all this wonderful new technology that we have. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we've got to start again. So take two at the main console. When you sit at the main console for the first time, you're sort of completely overwhelmed by the number of buttons and stops and toys and things. And you do actually have to think in a slightly different way when you arrive at this organ for the first time. On the left side, you've basically got all the stops belonging to the Grand Orgue. And on the right side, you have all the stops belonging to the choir organ, which is hidden behind the main altar up at the back there. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And the first thing you sort of realize is that, well, there's an awful lot of buttons there and an awful lot of sort of numbers. And once you've got your head around it, it's actually quite a clever system. For example, in the swell division, the réci, we have a réci 1 and a réci 2. Those are the two separate parts of the swell division, which means I can have these 4 stops on the first manual, and I can have these 4 stops on the second manual. So my swell organ is actually now 2 manuals in itself, yeah? Understand? It's the same thing with the Grand Orgue, number 1 and number 2, and actually it's the same in the pedal. We have pedal 1 and pedal 2. It doesn't say it there because obviously you've only got one pedal board to play, but you can split the pedal into 2 different parts, and theoretically you can take the pedal stops, for example the pedal basson, and there it is, playing by itself, because my foot was there. But I can couple the pedal stops up to a manual. Oops, if I take this. Those are pedal stops. So that means I can take the pedal reeds and play them in the manuals. That's weird. Okay, so a quick demonstration of some of the stops we have in the organ. When you press 0 here, or null, when you press the sort of 0 button, it sets the organ up for example, for a visiting organist who doesn't really already know what to do with all the different divisions here. And it's set up so that the grand organ is on 1, positive is on 2, swell is on 3, choir organ is on 4, pedal is of course on pedal. And that's quite easy to sort of set things up. So we can take the Montre 8 foot, for example, that's your principal klang. There is, of course, a traditional stopped flute, a bourdon. Excuse my parallel fifths there, but I'm just mucking about. There is, of course, the flute harmonique. You have to have one in a French organ. Cavaillé invented it, so it has to be here. There's an 8-foot stringy sound, a gambe, a gambe. And then there's a 4-foot flute that goes along with the 8-foot flute and so on. But we can sort of build up the 8-4-2 or even 16-8-4 and 2 principal chorus. And then we have a variety of different mixtures and things as you might find on any other organ. Moving briefly up onto the positive, the choir organ, we have a rather interesting effect. And it's a kind of, it's like the Swell Strings. It's got sort of those untuned pipes. When I say untuned, I mean they're tuned a little bit sharper to give that sort of nice undulating effect. Well, there's another effect on the positive division here, where the pipes are tuned slightly lower than the normal pipes. And that it's called Une De Maras, which means waves of the sea, and you combine that with the Montre, with the foundation stops, 8-foot, and it gives the most beautiful undulating effect. Listen to this. That's actually my favorite sound on the whole organ. You can combine it with the 8-foot flute as well, which is a little bit thinner, but nonetheless rather nice. Or if we add the Montre back to that, it fattens it up a bit. You lose some of the undulating effect, but it's still rather lovely. Very nice indeed. Now up in the swell division, you've got your typical swell strings. There are 2 different kinds here. We have a very soft one called Éoline with the celeste. Or a slightly stronger sound with the gambe. Try not to get too many fingers in the way when I'm doing that. And quite a lot of 8-foot sounds here. You can add them together to get that lovely principal sound we had down on the grand org as well. Here it is in the swell. Or we can add the oboe to that to give it a bit more snarl already. obviously you can play around with the swell pedal to get different effects there. So if we start coupling all these 8-foot sounds together, with a bit of pedal as well, of course. Now we need to couple these things to the pedal. Remember I said this before, you've got to think differently. You have to take your stops and put them where you want them. You don't look at the pedal and couple down to the pedal. You take the stops and put them where you want them. So I want that on the pedal, that on the pedal, and that on the pedal. And now I have all the 8-foot stops with that typical French romantic foundation sound. A very unforgiving console. There's any tiny little fluffs you play with a different key on the way past are going to be played. So please excuse the little mistakes in between. That's a sort of basic little view of some of the stops on the organ. I mustn't forget, of course, the French reeds at the top on the swell. Yeah? So if I close the swell back down and add the swell reeds, now we've got a big sound. No, we don't. Why don't we have that? I forgot to couple it down. Haha. I suppose we should have a quick look at some pedal stops while we're here. If I really beef up the organ now and add some mixtures, add some higher stuff as well, add a few more reeds, I need to do the same down in the pedal. So let's build up towards a full organ sound here. If you look at the pedal stops, we have two 32-foot open stops. Now, one of them is a proper 32-foot, that's a stopped 32, so the pipes are 16 feet long, and then stopped to give it the 32-foot effect. This montre is a harmonic effect. So it's taking the 16-foot sound and it's adding a fifth above it electronically to give a 32-foot resultant effect. And then, of course, we have our 32-foot and 16-foot reeds. And that gives this most amazing big French sound. Ready for this? Before we move on to the, let's call it the toy department, a quick word or two about the choir organ, which is also in two different divisions. We've got this sort of top division with 8/4, 2 2/3, 2 1 3/5, where you can play around, and you can put that anywhere you want, for example, on the first manual. Ah, it was me, not that. I hope you can hear that okay, because we've got the microphone set up to pick up the large organ, the big organ, and not necessarily this one, so I hope you can hear that okay. Maybe it's coming through on this one, all right. If I get rid of those, then we've got these two rows of stops here where you think that cannot possibly be true, but if you look very closely, you can see we have a row of stops with 1, with 2, with 3, and with 4. They're all exactly the same, so you can have them in different parts of the organ if you want. I can have, for example, the Bourdon 8 on the first manual. And at the same time, I can have the Voix Céleste on the second manual. Yeah? And if I wanted to be really clever, I could have the 8-foot chalumeau, that's a reed stop, on the third manual. So I've basically got 3 different manuals just with the choir organ. I could even be more clever and put that 8/4 2-bit up on 4. Four separate manuals and only the choir organ playing. It's quite cute, isn't it? So we're going to finish up now by looking at this lovely little toy counter, and hundreds of little stops here. Are they stops? Well, they're buttons that control different effects. Now when I say effects, we've got a whole variety of things we can do here. For example, I want to play a piece of music in C major. But a singer arrives and the singer tells me, but that's too high, can you play it lower? And let's say I can't be bothered transposing it by myself. I press this little button here and transpose the grand org, let's say, down 2 semitones. HT is German, and that means Halbton. So down 2 semitones. And that's the weirdest feeling in the world. Playing in C major, but hearing B flat major. Yeah. Let me go back up to 0. And now I'll go down 3 semitones. Huh. It's a very weird sound. So that's one thing we can do with these transposing effects. Something else I can do is rather clever. Let's say, for example, I have an 8-foot flute from the positive and a 4-foot flute from the great organ. But I want a sort of special effect for a kind of improvisation I'm doing, and I take that 4-foot flute and I transpose it, let's say, up 3 semitones. Now, on its own, that sounds really rather weird, but imagine you're improvising a sort of really modern piece of music with wonderful sort of fancy effects and things. That's what that's there for. It's wonderful. I love it. Some of the other things you can do are rather clever. And there's a feature called pizzicato, and I'll show you that. Here it says pizzicato for the chamade. Now this is rather clever. Let's say I've got pretty much full organ here. And I have the Chamade-Pfeifen. Now those are the horizontal trumpets right on top of the organ that shoot the sound right through the church. So here they are. But I want that as a special effect where they are pizzicato, which means they just go very quickly. Listen to this. That's a lovely effect. That's great. And you can do that with any part of the organ, have a little pizzicato thing running. I love using it with the chamade pipes because I think that gives a great effect, shooting that sound through the church. Lovely. We have another effect called Sostenuto, which is the exact opposite, that holds the pipe. So for example, if I have my big sound here and I want to hold these sounds, watch. That holds the sound for me. Now that is something, why would you want to do that? Well, let's say you've got a nice sort of stringy accompaniment going on in the swell division, for example, and at the same time you want to play a sort of duetty melody here. Why not? So, time to close up for today. Thank you for watching. Sorry it was a bit sort of mixed towards the end there, but we're running out of time and I still want to play something jazzy at the end. I love playing jazzy music on this organ. When I come and play concerts here, that's what I'm asked to do. So that's what I will do again today. But before we play that, I want to say thank you once again to all the people who have donated towards the channel in the past week, and of course to all the people who have subscribed. We're up to 8,000 subscriptions now, so we're going to get the 10,000 within the next couple of weeks, I reckon, which means it's time for my Bach, Toccata and Fugue. I'm learning it again, and it's hopefully going to be ready by the time 10,000 are there. So it might take a little bit longer than the 10,000. I never expected it to happen this quickly. I thought I'd have a bit more time. On the subject of time, I'm going to start writing an organ tutor book. A lot of people have written, it was a suggestion from a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people wrote back to say, yes, please do. And don't forget to include your sort of fun music in it. Well, I'm going to start doing that now. And we came up with an idea. We now have 3 possible ways to support the channel. There's PayPal Me for a direct donation, and then we have Steady, which is a sort of German crowdfunding thing where you can sort of sign up for memberships, monthly memberships. And a lot of people, the international folks, suggested, why not Patreon? And I'd heard a few things about Patreon before, so I hadn't really looked into it, but I did this week. So I've now set up a Patreon account, and I'm going to add sort of comments to that so that people know what we're going to be doing. But it's available for you now. We have 1 Patreon out there who has already subscribed. Thank you very much for doing that. I hope others follow suit. And we've got 3 different levels of memberships. That's on the Steady and on the Patreon thing. And what we've decided, if you go for a middle or a higher one, then you will receive a free copy, first of all, as a PDF copy of my organ book when it's ready, and my missus and I, we sort of thought about the idea of sending it to a publisher to actually get it properly printed. If it goes down well, then we might as well do that. So you will also receive, when we get that far, you will also receive a hard copy for free. So if you feel inclined to help support our channel, please use one of those methods. That would be very kind of you. Thank you very much. This week alone, I have been completely overwhelmed by the support we've had. We've had a lot of little donations, which is great. It all adds up. And there have been a couple of larger donations as well. One particularly large one from a gentleman in Sweden. So thank you very much for that. I will be contacting you, of course, personally to say thank you once again. We've had a sort of email correspondence this week talking about how we could go about doing this. And it's great to know that I've got people all around the world who are watching the channel and love what we're doing. I hope you continue to watch and, of course, subscribe. So that's it for today. On with the music. See you next time.